Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order at 7:00 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion to approve tonight's amended agenda?
I move to approve the amended agenda as presented.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved unanimously. Moving on to item number 2, presentations, proclamations, and visitors. We have, and I'm going to say this name wrong, Kelly Weiss, Marion County Economic Development Program Manager, and we'll be giving a presentation on economic development strategy updates.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the stab at the correct name, so thank you.
Della.
Other outside. All right, Christy's gonna pull up the presentation. But just quickly introducing myself, my name is Kelly Weiss. I'm the Economic Development Program Manager with Marion County, and I'm here today to talk to you about our update to our strategic plan for our program. So if you can go to the beginning of the slides. We're at the,
Okay.
yeah, it's all good.
Hold on.
There we go. Okay, you can go to the next slide. All right, so our economic development program promotes efforts that help grow the economy. And oftentimes what people think about when they think about economic development is taking that big new company with those 100+ jobs and bringing that into the community. And it can be that, and it often is, but it doesn't have to be. So it really can be anything that helps promote not only new jobs, but retaining current jobs, improving wages, and then anything that helps improve a general economy, quality of life, things that support the economy as a whole. So improving standard of living, all those community development projects that improve your community also counts as economic development. So if you can move on to the next slide. Our funding comes from lottery dollars, so video lottery proceeds. So 2.5% of video lottery sales in Oregon goes to counties in Oregon, and Marion County's portion of that is funneled into our economic development program. We have an annual revenue from those of about $2 million, which is not nothing, but I bring it up because oftentimes people, when they hear there's funding from video lottery, they're like, ooh, lots of dollars for infrastructure or something. It's good dollars, but it's not new infrastructure dollars. But we do our best to leverage those funds with other grant resources to bring even more capital into the county. So this year is actually an anomaly. We have 19 million of additional grant funding in addition to our video lottery, and most of that is for wildfire recovery up in the canyon. We can go to the next slide.
Sorry, I'm trying to watch the
Multitask.
comments as well.
So this very colorful slide, I won't go into too much because I know you have a really big agenda, but this is covering what we are currently doing. So we kind of have 3 different pockets of projects that we work on. The first is lottery distribution, which is basically taking the funds that we receive and getting them out the door as soon as possible. The one that the communities most know about is the Community Prosperity Initiative. So this is providing $15,000 to each of our incorporated cities each year to use however you see fit for your economic development purposes. We also have a newly created grant program called the Emergent Economic Opportunity Program, which provides some funding for projects that might need that little extra oomph to get completed. They got a grant, but they don't necessarily have all the dollars they need for completion. That kind of gap funding, that's what that's meant for. And then our 2 big areas where we focus the most staff time are business and workforce and infrastructure and economic investments. So business and workforce, we partner with a lot of the other agencies to be able to support their efforts. We have a partnership with SEDCOR, the Strategic Economic Development Corporation. We help fund a business retention expansion manager in Marion County through these dollars. Then we also partner with Willamette Workforce Partnership on the youth wage grant, which provides $5 an hour for businesses to hire youth in their first job from 14 to 17, because we know how hard it can be on businesses to hire those youth, and we want an incentive for people to do so. We just created a small business support grant for our chambers to be able to apply for funding to support their small businesses. And then kind of moving a little faster, infrastructure and economic investments. A lot of these projects are up in the canyon, but we do support tourism through this project. We've supported Travel Salem and the Oregon Garden. And then the North Santiam Sewer Authority, which is the government agency that the 4 Santiam Canyon communities created to support their sewer infrastructure once it's developed. We're doing the Detroit Marinas excavation project, which is excavating underneath the 2 marinas 5 feet to allow them to operate at a lower lake level and extend their summer season. And then most of our grant funding this year comes from the Opal Creek Promise funding. So long story short, back in '96, when the Opal Creek Wilderness was created, the federal government at the same time promised the canyon communities $15 million to offset the loss of timber revenue. The property was taken off the tax rolls, but that funding never actually arrived to the canyon communities. So Marion County has been fighting for those dollars for 30 odd years and have finally received, we haven't received them in hand, but through applying through Business Oregon and then the Forest Service, we've been allocated from the Forest Service to the state of Oregon. And then we're working on getting those dollars from the state down to Marion County and out to the community. So it's a lot of bureaucracy, but we're a heck of a lot farther than we were 30 years ago. And I'm pretty proud of that. And there'll be a lot of great things for the canyon. That's kind of it in a nutshell. If you want to move to the next slide, I don't want to focus too much on what we're currently doing because really what I'm here for is to let you know that we're working on updating our strategy for the next 5 years. So this is going to help provide guidance for how we spend our staff time, how we spend our dollars into the community. And I'm going out to each of our cities to get feedback from you on what you're working on, what's important to you, what you need support from us from, how we can better collaborate, those sorts of things. So I'll be going to the cities through mid-November, and we've got a survey available. Do you want to go to the next slide? Because I know how hard it is to provide feedback on the dais, although I'm happy to hear it if you have feedback. We also have a survey available, the local government survey. You're welcome to complete that either as individual city council members, as city staff. I'd love to provide any or get any feedback that we can, or if you're more comfortable, you can provide feedback as the city. Either way works for me. And then there's also a public survey available. So anybody in the audience, if you're interested, you're welcome to submit for the public survey. We want all the input we can get. There's a flyer at the front desk as you came in or as you're leaving if you want to snag one. And with that, I'm open to any questions.
There, I'm getting the surveys up on my phone. Do them later. Do you guys have any questions? Ron, do you have any questions?
Well, I might just come up for a second and thank Kelly for her work with the economic development work at the county, but specifically the community prosperity grant. In the past, the way that program had worked is we would apply through a competitive process with a project. And that was revamped a few years ago to be a contract distribution. And it's actually worked really well for us. And I just want to let Kelly know that some of the things that we've done with that money, mods, which is our Saturday market support facility, and we'd love to give you a tour when you got a day. We're happy to do that. As you know, we worked on that. In part, that was funded with some of the community prosperity dollars. Our Main Street improvement for our downtown businesses, that was some of the money was used for that. I believe our reader board, our communication hub for the city was used for that, which we use that to advertise for community events and public meetings and all kinds of great things, and even interjurisdictional things like the bridge work that was being done. And I believe I'd have to go back and check, but I think we also did use a little bit of that money to help fund our art project in front of City Hall. So it's been a great. We've actually, it's a small pool of money, but we've actually done a lot of really good things that are tangible in the community.
Thank you for that. That's helpful. Yeah, that program, the IGAs expire in June. So this is a nice way to pull that all together.
I don't have any questions, you guys.
Well, great.
Thank
Thank
you
you very
so
much.
much. I appreciate
it.
it.
Kelly.
Good luck
Thank
on
you.
your rest of your agenda.
Thanks. Are there any members of the audience or in Zoom that would like to provide comments on items not subject to public hearing? Nobody? Okay. So moving on to item number 3, consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I have a correction on the minute.
On the minutes? Okay,
It doesn't show me present for the last meeting.
we're present.
Also does not show me absent, so.
Where were
Maybe that's a
you?
win-win, but I was at the meeting, so just.
All right, can I get a motion with the corrections?
Move to approve the consent agenda with the corrections of Counselor Cox having been present at that meeting to the meeting minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Moving on to item number 4, first public hearing. The council will now open up public hearing on the urban growth boundary and comprehensive map amendment. The time is 7:11 p.m. We will invite Jesse I'm saying that wrong. Winterud, a contract planner with Winterbrook Planning to present the staff report.
All right, thank you,
Thank you.
Council. I was at remoted in last time and for the Planning Commission. And so I'll make sure to speak into the mic
Yes.
because it's it's hard to hear if you're remoted in and people aren't speaking in the mic. My name is Jesse Winterroad. As you said, we've been working on bringing in the park, Eastside Community Park, to the city. The first step was when you approved the update to the Parks Master Plan just recently and included an update to the comprehensive plan, which authorized the next step here to expand the urban growth boundary. So in order to do that, we need to go through statutory requirements, administrative rules, work with the county, work with the state. And if you have the staff report, we show the work to get there. We knew at the end of the day where the city was directed to go with the Parks Master Plan, but we had to show first, was there land available inside the urban growth boundary? Going around the urban growth boundary, we looked out 1.5 miles to look at all the areas around the city. We found there was only one place where an Eastside Community Park with the characteristics of an Eastside Community Park could occur. And it happens to be at the place where the Eastside Community Park is intended to occur in the Parks Master Plan. That's the extent of the process in a nutshell. We worked closely with DLCD to make sure that our findings were on point. We worked with Marion County to include the comprehensive plan policies that they needed us to address. We also talked with Thousand Friends to make sure that they wouldn't have a problem with what we're doing. And so far, those agencies have not had any complaints or concerns with our approach. So we went to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the package with the findings that we put together. And I am available to clarify any additional elements that you might want to talk about.
I have been in the weeds in this. I don't have any questions. What? Okay, we're good. Sorry, guys. Would any member of the audience or in Zoom like to submit public comments on this? None? Okay. Does staff have any additional comments?
I think maybe if Jesse could just speak to the process moving forward, should this be approved tonight? There's a series of things we still need to do.
That's right. So this is a step in the process to get this park active. The next step after this will be to go to the county, and the county will co-adopt the urban growth boundary amendment. And that'll change the comprehensive plan of the county and the urban growth boundary the county sees so that it's consistent with what we're doing here. After that, then you have land which is within your urban growth boundary, but you'll need to annex and rezone it. And that's the next step after it's within the urban growth boundary. This is the big step though, working through the state and making sure that you can actually annex and rezone the property. After you make a decision here, it goes to the county. They have an ordinance. They read their ordinance, and we have an ordinance here in front of you tonight that will become enacted upon the county enaction of their ordinance. So both ordinances line up, and that's when it is officially approved after it goes through DLCD acknowledgement in order to be within the urban growth boundary.
Thank you. All right, I will now close the public hearing at
Sure.
7:16 p.m. May I have a motion on ordinance 721?
I move to approve the ordinance number 721, an ordinance amending the city of Aumsville's urban growth boundary to include land needed to accommodate the East Side Community Park and amending the city of Aumsville's comprehensive plan map as presented by staff.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And just to remind council, if you want to adopt the ordinance tonight in its entirety, you do need a second reading and adoption.
Is there an action? Sorry, guys, I'm having a hard time reading this.
I move to approve the second reading by title only of ordinance 721 and ordinance amending the city of Aumsville urban growth boundary to include land needed to accommodate the East Side Community Park and amending the city of Aumsville comprehensive plan map as presented by staff.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Doug. So moving on to item B, the council will now open public hearing on the development code updates. It is 7:17 p.m. We will invite Holly, I'm going to say these names wrong. Byram. Did I say that? Contract planner with Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments to present the staff report. And Holly is on Zoom.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? Wonderful. For the record, my name is Holly Byram, and I work for the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments. I serve as a contract city planner for several cities throughout Marion County and Yamhill County as well. I'm fairly new to Aumsville, and it's been a pleasure working with staff on a couple of these files here. So the first item for public hearing this evening is a legislative amendment. And the purpose of this legislative amendment is to adopt a couple new revisions to the Aumsville Development Ordinance. Does the City Council have a staff report in front of them?
Yes, we do.
Wonderful. Okay. And does it include the attached proposed red line revisions to the development code?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. So this is a package of a couple different miscellaneous code amendments, and I won't go into great detail here. I trust that the council has reviewed the materials. But essentially, the staff report makes findings that the proposed revisions are consistent with the goals and policies in the Aumsville Comprehensive Plan. And what I did was I provided a couple of examples from the comprehensive plan about the intent of the city to provide a variety of housing types in the community and to support local business development and so on. And so if you look at the proposed revisions this evening, there are red line revisions to a couple different sections of code, but there are two main parts that I'd like to call attention to. These are the most important pieces. The first one being section 18, and this is found on page 95 of the Red Line Code revisions. And this is your off-street parking standards. And this is an amendment initially discussed by City Council, so this shouldn't be a new concept for the council. But the intent here was to provide some level of relief for larger developments that are required to provide more than 100 parking spaces. And this originated with discussions about the dimensions of the standard parking stalls, and could there perhaps be relief for a developer by allowing reduced sizes for larger parking lots. And so this is the intent of this section of code language. The second set of standards I'd like to call attention to is in section 28. And in the Red Line Code, that is found on page 186. So right at the end of the packet there. This is a brand new section called Master Plan Developments. And I'm hoping, Jesse, it could be available for any comments this evening. But this is a section that allows a developer of a larger property, again, of more than 2 acres in size, to acquire conceptual level approval from the city for streets and utilities and a large site layout without their final details, so that they have a sense of certainty before they invest in additional engineering and planning work. And so this is fairly common. You'll see in a lot of cities the size of Aumsville and larger. Aumsville code did not contain these code provisions, so this is a brand new code section. Okay. Pretty straightforward here. I'm happy to answer any questions. Please let me know what additional information you might need.
Would any member of the audience or in Zoom like to submit comments on this topic? None? Okay. Does staff have any additional comments?
I do not.
Who does? Okay. Okay. And then if there's no comments, I will now close the public hearing part of this, and the time is 7:23 p.m. May I have a motion on ordinance 722?
Motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 722 by title only.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes.
I
So-
move to approve the second reading by title only and enact ordinance 722.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
Moving on to item C. This is
Thank you, sir.
These ones.
Good night. You.
That's the same issue.
the same as. Hey, guys, I got a lot of reading to do, so. With the time and everything. All right, so moving on to item number C, and we will be, the council will now open up quasi judicial public hearing at 7:25 PM. The hearing for City File 2023-05 a subdivision and replant application submitted by applicant Udell Engineering on behalf of property owner Thomas, I'm going to say this name wrong, Yeomans. The 5 subject properties are generally located on the east end of Clover Street, north of Shamrock and west of North First Street. A copy of the agenda and hearing procedures for this meeting is on the table. The hearing has been opened at 7:25. Oregon land use laws requires a legal statement to be read into the record at the beginning of every public hearing. Your patience is appreciated as I read this. The detailed statement is also printed and available at the back of the table. The applicable criteria upon which this case will be decided are found in the Aumsville Development Ordinance and will be reviewed during the staff report. All public testimony and evidence must be redirected toward the criteria described or to any other criteria which you believe applies to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by the statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision and the parties to the hearing an opportunity to respond to the issues precludes the appeal of the Land Use Board of Appeals. During tonight's public hearing, all interested individuals will have an opportunity to speak. Please state your name, your mailing address clearly for the record before you speak. All speakers are limited to 5 minutes. If you have any documents, maps, or letters that you wish to have considered by this body, they must be formally placed in the record of this proceeding. To do that, either before or after you speak, please leave the material with the city staff who will make sure your evidence is properly taken care of. Prior to the conclusion of tonight's hearing on this case, any participant may request an opportunity to present individual evidence or testimony, as this is not the first evidentiary hearing on this case. If a constitution is requested, is that right? Did I say that? Continuation is requested, the city council will decide if a continuation will be granted. If a continuation is granted, a date and time certain will be set. At this time, I will ask the audience, is there another page? Yeah. Are there any objections to the notice that was sent in on this case? Are there any objections online? Are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the city council to hear and consider this case? None in person. Are there any online? I will now ask the city councilors, are there any declarations of conflict of interest by any member of this body? None. Okay. Are there any declarations of ex parte contact or site visits by any member of this body? None. Are there any declarations of bias by any member of this body? None. One final question for all parties in attendance. Are there any challenges to the declarations made or not made by any members of the city council regarding their ability to participate in this hearing? None. We are now ready for the staff report. Any staff report?
Thank you. For the record, again, Holly Byram with the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments. Okay, so we have a subdivision before us this evening. As the City Council is aware, a subdivision is a type of land division that creates 4 or more lots. In this case, Mr. Yeoman's properties, there are 5 properties to begin with. They total just under 4 acres, and what is proposed is a subdivision of 15 lots, and this is a residential subdivision, so these lots could be developed with single-family homes or duplexes or even multifamily if they're large enough. This property is zoned RM, which is your multifamily residential zone. It's intended to be a little bit higher density than the single-family residential. There's a couple different standards that apply in the Aumsville Development Ordinance. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on October 5th, and they did recommend unanimously that the City Council approve this subdivision before you this evening. Just a couple points I'd like to go over, and then I'm happy to answer any questions if you like. When we consider subdivisions in Aumsville, we need to think about the size of the properties that are being created, the alignments of the streets that are being platted, the sufficiency of the utilities that are available. And so what I've done in the staff report this evening is tried to touch on each of those items there. You'll find in the staff report on page 5, there's an overview of the subdivision that's being proposed. There are a couple existing single-family dwellings that are on the property already, and several of them are proposed to remain. 2 lots included in the subdivision are actually a part of another subdivision, and they're being replatted. And so that's why it says subdivision and replat. This subdivision proposes the continuation of Clover Street. It will not cross the railroad tracks. Instead, it will take a turn to the north, and eventually, when the property to the north is developed, Clover Street will meet up to Del Mar, but it does not yet. Because of that, the applicant is showing that there will be an easement for turnaround. These turnarounds are important for fire apparatus, but also for garbage trucks and any other utility vehicles that come down this area. And so that is being provided by the applicant. It's important to point out that all of the lots exceed the 8,000 square foot minimum lot size. The average lot size is actually a little bit larger than 9,000 square feet. The applicant is providing tract A, which is a stormwater tract, and that is to detain some stormwater runoff before it enters into the Aumsville stormwater system. And the applicant is also proposing a pedestrian connection from Clover Street near the stormwater tract over to First Street. And so that is important to have that pedestrian connectivity. Otherwise, there are no variances requested with the subdivision application. Clover Street is being proposed to be paved with sidewalks to the standard widths, so no concerns there. This application was reviewed by the Fire Department, Public Works, City Engineer, ODOT Rail, and there are some comments that were provided. I'd like to call your attention to the staff recommendation, which is approval subject to the recommended conditions of approval. And those conditions of approval begin on page 24 of the staff report. There's a lot of standard language in there in terms of compliance with the Aumsville Development Code and the Public Works standards, ensuring that again, that path makes it all the way to First Street, and ensuring that we have fire department approval prior to platting. So the conditions of approval are included in the staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I know that the applicant would like to say some words this evening, and I imagine that they can answer some detailed questions as well. So that concludes my staff report for now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So would any of the member of the audience in person or via Zoom like to submit their comments? We have none. Is this where the applicant would like to come speak?
Good evening, Aumsville City Council. My name is Laura LaRock with Udell Engineering. Address for the record is 63 East Ash Street in Lebanon. So thank you, Holly, for giving a very detailed overview of the application. There won't be too many pieces that I'll repeat, but I will just kind of give a brief overview and then, of course, here for any questions that you might have. So as Holly mentioned, it's kind of a 2-part application. The first part is a subdivision. So that's actually the creation of lots. The second part of it is replatting or adjusting properties that already exist through a different subdivision. All the lots that are being proposed conform with the minimum standards for width, depth, and area. As a concept plan has been included in the plan set to show some conceptual designs of those lots once they're created. In addition to the creation of the lots, there will be the creation of a public street. Again, we've reviewed the Aumsville Development Code and Public Works standards, and those do conform to those standards. In addition to public streets, all public water, sewer, and stormwater will also be provided to make sure that the future lots have those connections. The one track is proposed with this application, and that will be for stormwater detention. So with that, we have reviewed the conditions of approval. We are in agreement. Those are pretty standard for any sort of approval. So really, my main purpose of being here this evening is answering questions. So I'll turn it over to you.
Does the council have any questions?
I just had a question for Holly.
Oh, I gotta close, sorry. 'I have to read this and then close it?
Can I ask my question?
Close it first,
Okay.
and you can ask what.
Ask for questions.
Yeah, you can ask questions of staff at any point if you choose to.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. This is the first time I'm reading this. The city's decision may be appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals within 21 days of the final written decision mailing following LUBA's appeal process. If the appeal is filed, the decision is final. I will now close the public hearing at 7:36 p.m. and move on to council deliberations.
I'm just going to defer to Holly for a procedural answer. Do we go ahead and do questions during the public hearing or after the public hearing?
It's important that the applicant has the last word in terms of having a rebuttal. So if there's any questions that are substantive that could introduce new information into the record, we should have those questions of the applicant before we close the hearing.
Okay,
So
so we can keep the hearing open, yeah.
I think we can keep the hearing open and let's go through the question
questions.
process.
Yeah.
So we will have to update our process later so that it reflects that. All right, go ahead and ask your question.
I just was curious, was there any opposition at all from any public comment, any neighborhood questions, anything?
No, there was no public comments received as far as I'm aware.
No, staff heard no public comments either during the public hearing or in writing.
Okay. For those, now I can close the public hearing. All right. Do I need to read that statement all over again, Ron?
No, I think you're fine, but if the applicant doesn't have anything further.
Yeah, no rebuttal. So thank you for having us
All
this
right.
evening and considering the request. Have a good evening.
Well, now
Thank you.
officially close the public hearing at 7:38 p.m.
I think you should read it again.
Okay, that's it. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you, Holly.
I'm
Moving
sorry,
on.
I don't know if I caught a vote on that one.
I don't have a thing to vote on. It doesn't say.
Yeah, we actually have to move to approve the subdivision.
Okay. So is there a motion to move to approve the subdivision?
I move to approve the subdivision and replat, adopting the findings and recommended conditions of approval contained in the staff report as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
I'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is old business. There is no old business. Moving on to agenda item number 6, new business. Item A is updates to the employee handbook. We will now invite City Administrator Ron Hardy to provide information on the updates.
You could tell how thick our packets are for this meeting tonight. It's a lot of background and information. Apologize for that hearing script. We made some assumptions there, but we'll get a little more detailed. We just don't do quasi judicial hearings that often. But there is specific things that we want to make sure that we cover just from a liability standpoint. So Okay. So let me find what I'm doing. Oh, I have the employee handbook. That's what we're discussing tonight. I'm gonna go through the changes in the employee handbook. I also asked our chief of police, Damian Flowers, if he would come tonight, because there's a couple of different aspects of changing this, but there's also some decisions related to our local police department. We kind of wanted to do those in one action here. So, as council recalls, it's been a long time now, maybe a year and a half ago, I'm gonna guess, well over a year ago. Our police officers petitioned to form a collective bargaining unit. As we spent the last year going through that collective bargaining process, one of the things we did was hired legal representation from BEH, which actually was very, very good, very knowledgeable representation. But through that process, we uncovered some things that we were currently doing with some recent law changes that we probably should fix. So I've made a light revision of the employee handbook. There's just some minor things in here. There's a couple of revisions that we'd already had scheduled to change in our next update. But we'll have to come back and re-update this more comprehensively. I'm just kind of grabbing the low-hanging fruit. So sometime after the first of the year, we're going to have to do a test of this handbook against current law because there's been a number of things that have changed. And so for you, I'll go through some of those changes. Really, there's only, other than some Scribner type errors, there's just a few, and I'll highlight those things that are significant. One is for meal reimbursement or reimbursement of mileage. We had a fixed rate embedded in the handbook, and one of the things that we found with the inflation that's occurring, having a fixed rate probably isn't the best way to reimburse for those expenses. Now, we don't really have a lot of travel, training, reimbursement expenses, but we just thought it would be better to tie to the GSA rate. We typically use that for mileage as our criteria anyway, but we just thought we'd go ahead and tie the meals to that as well. The nice thing about that is if you're traveling to a different region, rather than having a set amount, that rate is calculated for that area. You know, if you go to California, it might be more expensive. Again, not a real big deal, but we went ahead and did that. Most of the larger changes are related to the new Oregon Leave Act. And so our legal counsel raised some concerns with how the city had our sick leave bonus days, that might be a violation of the Leave Act. There's a few other things in here that probably could be violations. We didn't change those yet because we want to do a comprehensive review. But certainly that one was one of those things that violated it. And I'm not able to give you a legal argument. I didn't get that in depth. It's just she recommended we probably should eliminate that. And so how we thought we would address that, or our proposal to addressing that, was on average, employees throughout the city would get 2 personal days. They would earn 2 personal days through that sick leave bonus program. And so what we're proposing to do, rather than having something that promotes people to come to work sick, that we would offset that by, one, adding a holiday to our holiday leave, which was Juneteenth. We picked that because most likely industry standard, a lot of cities have added that day, and we're probably going to add that anyway. And then offering one additional personal day, a floating personal day for staff. And that would offset the sick leave bonus program. So that's our recommendation there. Pre-COVID, we were really concerned about sick leave abuse. And that's one of those incentive programs that was developed kind of in the old, I hate to say the old days, but really that old frame of thinking to try to get people to come to work. And really post-COVID, we really want to encourage people to stay home if they're sick in any manner. Even if they're not testing positive for something, if they just don't feel well, they probably shouldn't come to the workplace. And in addition to running afoul to the Oregon Leave Act, I don't want to encourage people to come to work to try to earn a bonus day. I just want them to stay home. So that was that. It's not in your book because I think you guys got a clean line version, but in the very back of your book, there's some codes of conduct and workplace rules, the prohibited conduct. There's a section, let me see, ethics. Okay, it's actually on page 43 and it's under use. And I just wanted to point out because the terminology there is a little vague. And basically what this says is employees are not allowed to use city equipment for personal use. You know, running a business on the side or whatever they might be doing,
Ron,
you know,
I
visiting.
don't think that's on that right page.
Pardon me?
No,
On 43.
it's not on
Because
43.
you've got the red line version, that's
I got no, ours it's 49, I think.
Use, yeah, 49. Use,
49, yes, use, that's right. Mine, it's 43 because I've got the cleaned up large print version so I can read it. Okay, yep, under use. Basically, what this does is it tells employees you cannot use city equipment for personal use. And other than, you know, if they were on their break and, you know, they wanted to order something online, if it's de minimis or minimum, we wouldn't have a problem with that. But if they were all day long doing something, what this doesn't include, and I just want to make sure we're clear, is the use of our public Wi-Fi network. We have that, and employees get on there and on their break and play games and stuff. And I just want to make sure we don't have that called out there, but we'll spell it out for you guys. The Wi-Fi is an open network. I just don't want somebody to come back later and accuse staff because they were on the Wi-Fi network playing a game or something on their break. So I just want to make sure that we have that. Otherwise, I have a staff report there. I can't remember. I don't think there was anything else major in the revisions there, but we just wanted to get those couple of revisions put into place. Oh, there was one other thing, and that had to do with new hires. We've had a couple of new hires that have fallen ill right after we've hired them. And in the past, we would say, you know, you can't take a sick day for 6 months. And they wouldn't have anything accrued, so they basically would be sick without pay. What we've done in those cases is we've had other staff donate leave to those folks. What we'd like to do is we put in a little exemption in under the sick leave section that said, if you're a new employee, the city administrator can authorize you to go into a negative accrual. What that does is it allows us to give them a paycheck so they're able to pay their bills, and then they have to pay that back themselves. Now they could ask for donated leave from somebody, but they would, you know, they'd have to go through that step. And it's only for a week, so it's going to be a rarity, but I wanted to have some flexibility without asking somebody else to give up their sick leave, just another option that might be available.
Borrow against what they're going to accrue. in the
They can
future.
borrow up to a week, 5 days.
How will that repayment plan look?
Well, it just shows a negative on their balance. Let's say, for instance, somebody was here for 2 weeks and they got sick for a week. We would pay them as we paid for sick time, but then they would have to, when they came back, when they accrue 8 hours, it would go into it would come from their negative bank. So they'd have to pay that back. Basically, it's a repayment.
Would there be an option of just not getting paid for that?
They could do that. Yeah, that would be up to their option. This would be if they needed it.
Considering what we've gone through with COVID, I can certainly understand how that is, because if they caught it while they were at work, I don't want to penalize them.
We just wanted to have a little option.
I guess my question is like, if I accrue 8 hours and I'm negative 24, right? It's gonna take me 3 months to pay that back.
That's right.
And I can appreciate that too. I can appreciate being able to go.
Yeah, we're not giving them anything extra. We're just we're allowing them to be a little bit of flexible with their accrual there. But I didn't have that flexibility, so we've been just getting folks to donate up till now. I just hate to ask if we give them another option. Yeah.
So it's only for that first 90 days. It doesn't just keep rolling. Other employees can't use it.
No, no, it's only a new hire. We say in here for the first 12 months because we don't know at what point they'll get sick and then how long it'll take them to pay it back. So if they're here on the 3rd month and they got sick for 8 days or something, they may be 8 or 9 months paying that back into their bank. So we put 12 months. It's a 12-month period. Which is typically their probation period, but it's only good for 1 week. It's not good for a week at a time. It's good for 1 week during the entire 12-month period. Yeah. All right, so that's it on these changes. Now, I'd like to go in a little bit more in depth about our collective bargaining unit and where we are. So we met several times with the bargaining unit. The officers did have a few good points, and there were some recommendations that were made by our legal counsel. And then out of the blue, we got a order to dissolve the bargaining unit. We don't know the reasons behind any of that. But it is officially dissolved or disband. I don't know how we characterize it, but it no
Dissolved
longer
works.
exists. Our officers are no longer represented as of now, as far as we know. So there were some things prior to the formation of the bargaining unit that the chief and I had been working on from a fairness standpoint. And then there were some things that the officers brought up, and we'd like to bring those forward to you tonight and discuss. Not that we're trying to head off another bargaining unit, because that's obviously not what we're trying to do. Just some things that seem like it would be the right thing for us to do. And so a couple of those things that we heard from officers were, obviously it's important to us. We actually kind of provided, I think we said, if we had somebody who was Spanish speaking, fluent speaking, we should pay an incentive for those folks. You can't really require, unless their job is only to be in that role, you can't really require somebody to be Spanish speaking. But we can provide an incentive pay to try to attract more people that are Spanish speaking. And I think council and even the mayor had mentioned this a couple of years ago. So we would offer up 5%, a 5% pay premium for people that are fluent in Spanish. That doesn't have to be, these things don't have to be in the employee handbook. They just have to be authorized by you. We don't typically put like all the little details in the book. It's more about procedure and policy and general benefits. We did there were a lot of discussion about paying for certain duties that officers performed, and that's not uncommon in the police world, but the chief and I were really uncomfortable getting too much into that. The one thing that we did agree to that is a lot of additional responsibility, somewhat out of class work, would be FTO training. And so we would like to
FTO means?
field training officer. It's basically when you have somebody that goes through the academy, and they have to shadow one of your officers who supervises them for a period of time.
Thank
Yeah. And so during that, we felt pretty strongly that while they're training, not for their entire, employment, but just the hours that they're training, that we should pay a 5% premium for that. It was something we actually had planned to implement, again, prior to the collective bargaining process. When your group is represented, you lose your ability to go in and make any changes until you're done with the bargaining. Now that we're not bargaining, we can make those changes. So we wanted to get them in before something happens.
Were those already not?
Pardon me?
Marketing? Was that not already proposed?
It was proposed during bargaining. It was one of the subjects. We would have implemented it before, had we not got the petition. That was something that we were preparing to do internally. Now, of course, that's not hour for hour. That's just when they're doing that work. The other duty pay we rejected for the most part, because we're already paying somebody to be in that role unless they're working out of their class, like a patrol taking on the sergeant's role or something. We were pretty strong that we didn't want to do that. However, when we did our comps for this process, our PD is a little lower than we'd like to see it. We like to see that wage up there just a little bit more. So the chief and I are recommending a one-time 2% wage adjustment for department-wide. Not everybody's wages are low, but it's kind of hard to say in the department, especially if they're part of a bargaining unit. It would have been hard to say this person, can get a bump, but this person can't get a bump. It's not that significant. And so we would recommend offering that to our officers.
And where would that put us in comparison to other cities?
Well, right now, if you look at our comparables that we did, and what we did was we hired a firm that specializes in preparing cities for arbitration in the event that you go there. And so they look at a total cost of compensation. Now, when we do our wage analysis, we don't look at total cost of compensation. We just look at salaries and medical, the two main things. But with a lot of other cities, you have all of those little different role, maybe somebody's give me something that they do, the evidence technician. Yeah, SWAT, one of those things. They'll get a pay increase for that, depending on if they offer those things. And so when you look at that total cost of compensation, we're in that 4 to 6% above the center, the medium. And we really try to be closer to 8 to 10. That's always been our goal with all of our staff.
To be 8 to 10 above the median.
Yeah. So, and when we do our comp analysis next year, we're going to present it different to you. Instead of in those percentages, we're going to rank them so that you can see where our folks are in that column. That's what we decided to do based on your feedback last time. And then the final thing, I think, on your list, So I want to make sure I have my list. Do you have a copy of that list? Okay. Well, actually, there's two more things. One is to provide an additional $50 for an advanced DPSST certification. Right now, we give a pay incentive for that, but it's only $50 more for an advanced than a intermediate. And we think the advance is worth a little bit more than 50. So we're recommending that. And then the final thing is something we really have to do anyway. And that is one of the biggest issues that the officers had during bargaining was the fact that they have to use their personal cell phones. And as you know, we are exposed to the Open Public Records Act. And with officers, it's even more so. As a matter of fact, probably 90% of our public information requests are for PD and officers that we get. And so our attorney recommended that that's probably not a good policy for us, that we should go ahead and issue cell phones to those officers. We give them a cell phone reimbursement, but they're just real uncomfortable using their own personal cell phones that, you know, might have to be relinquished at some point. And I understand that. These are the things that we're recommending. The Spanish incentive would be citywide. Everything else that you see in here would be specific to our police department. So it's a 2% pay increase starting November 1st. 5% incentive for the Spanish speaking, 5% incentive for the FTO while they're training. And then the $50 additional DPSST. These aren't, other than the 2% bump, everything else is just really some minor additions. The reason why we're recommending these is one, we think it's the right thing to do. And we want to make sure that we're sending the message to our officers that we're not trying to take anything away from them. We're a city with limited resources and we're doing the best we can. Happy.
I misunderstood that first.
We're not allowed to ask. Unfortunately, we don't know.
Where's the grant? Where's
Well, it comes from the employee hearings board, the state employees hearings board. Yeah. Yeah. And they have to go through it's a petition process in order to form. And I think they go through a petition process in order to dissolve, don't they? Or is it just nobody objects? Yeah.
basically we're giving them what we were going to give them in bargaining anyways.
That's my recommendation. Yeah.
Or before bargaining.
Or before,
Prior
yeah.
to.
Most of this we were going to do last year, but then we got the petition and our hands were tied. We could not do it. But I don't want to wait and go through the next budget cycle to do it. I just figure we're fresh off of this bargaining thing. Let's go ahead and let's give them the incentive. We've actually saved money because we would have did this a few months ago. So
It's the employee's decision, especially with the police department, to decide to unionize, and it's their decision to decide to not continue it.
yeah. And here's the thing, should they decide to form a new bargaining unit at some point down the road, whether it's a month from now or 2 years from now, whenever, everything we've done here actually puts us in a better position to bargain. One of the things that I think was apparent was we actually had provided a lot of good benefits to our staff. And we had kept up on wages. We didn't let folks fall behind. We had kept up on COLAs. We didn't let folks fall behind. And so when we were bargaining, we were in a very strong position. Now, these were things that, you know, they brought up in bargaining, but we also had previously identified most of this, but we were in a very strong position. If we would have had to go to, you know, if it would have gotten contentious and we would have had to go to some third party, the city was in a very, very strong position. I don't want to lose that strong position. It doesn't weaken us to be a little bit stronger. Yeah. So what I'm asking for tonight is just approval from you to accept the changes in the employee handbook. And the approval, it's within our current budget to allow these additional incentives. And it would just be your approval to allow us to pay these additional incentives if you feel so inclined.
I just want some clarification. So the differential for the FTE is only during the hours that they're actual training, not their whole time, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we have, I think, 3 officers that can do FTO youths. 2. Okay. So we only have 2. So, and we are doing a lot of FTO training because we've had some new hires, but.
And then, does Chief have anything to add to, or would you like to? Okay.
So you were saying that eventually there will be around the first year, some more additions to the.
Yeah, there's a couple of new state laws that I think we need to address in there. I still have some concerns about the Oregon Leave Act. We have language in there about the pay order. So you have to exhaust your sick leave, then you have to exhaust your vacation. I don't believe under the Pay Act, we can enforce that. I think somebody could come in and they could have a bank full of leave. And if they want to apply to the state, they can do that. They don't get paid their full rate. So I'm not sure why anybody would do that, but I want to make sure that our handbook reflects exactly what that law is. There's some changes to the Equal Pay Act. There's a couple of other things. I need to do a more in-depth revision. I'm actually doing a revision for a couple of other cities, so I'm gonna put them, I'll do one revision and then everybody will get the benefit of it. We'll put that language in all of them.
I think the pregnancy accommodation is a little.
Yeah.
So my question is, should we move to table this until it's complete?
Well, we want to be able to apply those couple of things that we asked for. That's why, that's why we brought it for you, but we will be bringing one back in a couple of months. I just need a little bit more time to go through some of that other stuff.
Will we see the whole thing again?
You'll see the whole book with new revisions, yeah. And largely what I do is I use CIS's guidance. CIS has a team of lawyers that have language that they write. Once they understand what the new laws mean, because they don't always understand that until it takes a while, because sometimes these laws are a little elusive, right? And so that's one of the reasons why we haven't updated it till now. The updates that we're doing are simply on the advice of our counsel. We haven't done that.
They need to be done right now and can't wait till the first of the year. For the final revision.
Well, if our legal counsel says that our bonus leave program actually violates current law, I want to act on it. Yeah. I don't want people to continue to accrue bonus days if that violates state law somehow.
I think handbooks also change frequently with different laws, and so there wouldn't be any reason not to go ahead and approve what you have so far. Plus, you want to get that 2% increase.
I agree with her. So if we can move to approve on this, and if there's any other changes that can be made that benefits our police officers, and make another motion later on, I'm all for it.
Second.
I move to approve changes to the employee handbook and add incentive pay for the police department as presented.
Second.
Was that the only thing?
I think it needs to be amended to say the
Yeah.
police department and other city staff because of the Spanish speaking
that's-
portion.
That is.
Correct, as well as the
Okay.
leave.
I will amend it to, I move to approve changes to the employee handbook and add incentive pay for the police department and other employees as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you. The employee handbook. Do you have a copy of my stuff?
Ron, I'm gonna pause for a little second. I think all of us has taken a potty break now. I have to-
Okay.
The third one of this.
So many papers here. We did ask our contract planners to keep their reports a little short or a little more concise, I guess, so that we didn't go hours into the wee night.
To give you more time?
Well, the planning commission, I think we were 2 or 3 hours going through those same 3. It took a while.
To put it all together than it did for us to read, and that was several hours to get through it.
Well, and the timing of all of that was that we couldn't do it at the last meeting because the adoption was just a couple days before the last meeting and we didn't have time to put it together, so. We actually got through a lot. I was thinking maybe 9 or 10, so we're doing really well,
You're not done yet.
but I'm almost done.
See, even Siri doesn't believe it. I don't know, but they were like not agreeing with Ron saying he was almost done.
I was trying to make it.
I'm gonna go fast through my report. If it's okay if I proceed.
All right, are we moving on to city administrator report?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so in my report, I wanted to report that we made about $18,000 profit on Corn Festival. That's significant because we had more sponsors last year and we made $4,000 less. So we're able to maximize our profit. I think really not having the street Friday night event really allowed us to focus more on vendor revenue and organizational aspects of the festival. So I just wanted to make that point. We do have a recommendation. We provided a list right here for you all of awards. And these are for all the groups that volunteered. These were nonprofit groups that provide services within the city. Marion County Search and Rescue, they provide services within the whole county, but they do cover us too as well. And we're making some suggested awards based on past awards, how much they participated, how much work they did, how many volunteers they had. Some of the groups here volunteer regularly, so they do things like our Easter event, a Christmas event. So we give them maybe a little extra weight for that. But this is our suggested distribution. And if you don't have an issue with how we've organized this, we would bring contracts forward at the next meeting, which you could approve as a group or individually. It would be up to you. So if you have any comments on that, I'm happy to hear it. I know that there was a request to try to give some funding to the Corn Rock Princesses. Am I saying that right? And I think so we will pay for supplies. And we bought the medals and different things like that. So if we get a request for that in advance, we can order that as part of our expenses. we can't really give them a distribution unless there's a nonprofit entity formed. That's the difficulty there. But what we could do is we could give out thank you cards, like gift cards. So we could give each of the princesses like a $50 thank you card or something like that as like an honorarium. If you'd like to do that. So I just
think
wanted,
The request was, so how can they get funding so that they can continue to participate and provide that service to the community? We have one volunteer and a couple parents who are providing most of that. And the community really does like it. So
Yeah.
if they're not a nonprofit, how can we support them next
well, we
year?
can buy like their tiaras. Or I don't know if they had a tiara.
Yep,
But
they did.
if they have a tiara, or
Had the tiara, they had the banner, they have
sash,
the dress.
the medals, we buy the medals that they give for the people that find the special rock. We
So
can do
when-
all of that stuff as
when
part of our
would-
event.
When would they approach the city next year to be able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working with Deanna
Okay.
and I've been getting the things that she's requested.
Okay.
So, but
So should-
if you wanted to give the princesses like a little thank you, we could do a thank you card with a little gift card for each of them if you'd like.
Should some of the money just be set aside from this 18,000 just for miscellaneous support? Something like that?
Well, my only hesitation there is when we go out and seek donations, we tell those donators that all the proceeds will go to these nonprofits. And so I feel like we kind of have to distribute that, but we do have a little, a line item where we can get a little bit of money from. It's not a lot, but we can get some gift cards or things like that. And then as far as like the sashes and the, those types of things, as long as it's standard stuff, like I wouldn't be ordering anything customized, it would have to be within reason, then we can just take that out of our community events expenses. So,
They might need. And
I haven't heard anything. This was just something that came forward from council, so.
It'll be something that I think at some point we'll have to, budget because I know Deanna has kind of taken a lot of that on from her own personal money. And I mean, we're probably okay, now kind of as things are presented, but I think probably when we get towards budget time next year, we may want to allocate, some money going forward.
So just to be clear, there is budgeted money for expenses in the Corn Festival line item, so we can pay for expenses, but I
We
took
just
it
have
that we
have
wanted to give them
presented To.
extra.
I guess that was my question. Thank you.
Yeah, just because I mean, it's kind of grown steadily and I don't want us to be in a situation where, when someone's showing out, money and,
Yeah,
it's been a really successful program for our community. That's just
Yeah.
my concern, but it sounds like we have a plan.
yeah, well, so indirectly it comes out of these profits anyway, because the money that we earn, the expenses are subtracted from the money that we earn. So it's not a direct distribution, but it's an indirect because we can pay the expenses.
Okay.
So,
So before we say there's 18,000 profit, we've already replenished that community fund. For the budget.
so Corn Festival, there's two places that we expend money for, though there's at least two places that we expend money for community events. There may be three. One is the children's program. If the event is part of their program, some of that expense may come out of there. There's a community events line item in the budget under general fund, which pays for everything but Corn Festival. And then there's the Corn Festival line item, which is a completely separate fund. So this 18,000 is just in that Corn Festival line item. It's all of the revenue minus all of the expenses for anything related to Corn Festival.
We don't hold anything back for the next year's Corn Festival or for future.
No. We're not building a reserve. We're just, if we have a bad year next year, they'll get less money. If we have a better year next year, they'll get more money.
Well, I'm just thinking that, it seemed like the city put out more this year for the street event. And support that, it's like, should we save some of that money, or should we put some of that back into supporting that? Whatever other supportive event we have, the support.
Yeah.
Corn Festival.
Kind of think I know where he's going. It's like maybe we should create a new fund just for Corn Fest.
We have one.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what he's trying to
Right,
explain
but
to you,
shouldn't
is
some
that
of
we
this-
have these different funds.
But shouldn't some
But
of this
money-
profits go into that?
Money in a budget can't roll over. Like what you're thinking.
Well, it,
Quite the same.
it could, I mean, we could create a reserve line for Corn Festival, but that's really not the model we set up when the city took it over. When there was a nonprofit organization, they had a capital reserve that they used to start up money for the next year, because you've got expenses before you're taking in any revenue. So they had to have seed money. And so they did have some seed money. When the city took it over, our objectives were different. Our objectives were, number one, to keep the event going, right? To reorganize it so that it was more efficient. There was a lot of, we were losing a lot of volunteers because of the inefficiency of the event. People would go down, think they were going to volunteer for an hour, and they were stuck there because nobody else came to volunteer. And, you know, then next year they would be like, I'm not doing that again, and they wouldn't volunteer. The third thing that council asked us to do is to build a volunteer base. And so the model that we presented was that we would use this as a fundraiser for those nonprofits that provide service in the city. And that would encourage them to volunteer. And what we've seen, and the report shows it, is we've seen a steady increase in both the number of volunteers and the number of hours that they're spending volunteering. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, we said we were going to do the corn bagging on Friday. It was met with some skepticism, but we decided to try it. And the first year, I think we had about 25 volunteers for that Friday event, which was great because we got about half the corn, 2/3 of the corn bagged on Friday, which meant you did not need 25 volunteers bagging corn on Saturday. You could use those same volunteers to do something else. This year we had 66 volunteers. We bagged all the corn in less than 2 hours. And so a lot of those nonprofits are saying, hey, we don't really have to do a fundraiser on our own, and maybe it'll be successful, maybe it won't. If we show up, we can get some money. And I think it's a good model. So if that's our model, then we wouldn't be like sticking capital reserve. At the time, council said, we don't care if it costs us the whole budget. That isn't how we did it, but they said, we just need to keep the event going. And if it costs us $20,000 or $25,000, that's what it costs us. But we were able to repay all those expenses back and then some.
So is this distribution based on the number of volunteers or the total hours? Because I can't tell by looking at this.
Yeah, it's based on, it's a subjective number, so just so there's not a point system. It's based on the number of volunteers that the group provided, the number of hours that they provided, and the number of hours they provided throughout the year for supporting other events. So as an example, if they participated in all of the planning meetings, if they participated in Christmas in the park and they volunteered for Easter, we gave them a little extra for those things. Not a lot. I mean, we didn't double and triple it, but we gave them a little bit extra. But mostly it's based on the number of people they provided to support Corn Festival.
So I mean, I see that the search and rescue got $3,000 and they had 123 volunteers.
No, 123 hours.
23 hours. Exchange Club got $1,000 more and they had less total hours and one more volunteer.
Yeah, so the reason why that is because they do all the other events throughout the year and they participate in all the planning. Search and rescue just comes for Saturday. they direct the cars and then
The
they leave.
Exchange Club
So
also,
we should add all of those hours into here, so then that would make sense.
We just, we could do it that way, but right now we're just kind of tracking what it takes to operate the Saturday event. Last year, Search and Rescue had $3,500, but they did 2 days because they did the Friday night parking as well. So they had a lot more hours for less money, actually. So they actually, this year we changed that model a little bit too. So they actually get, they get more than the revenue they generate by their volunteerism. But this year they did better than previous years, so.
I'm just thinking if this amount is allocated based on the total hours. we should just show the total year leading up to the Corn Fest.
Yeah,
Total hours plus the Corn Fest hours, and then it's allocated.
we could probably come up with that information. We just didn't put it down in this particular chart because we know the Girl Scouts come and fill up Easter eggs and, you know, the Boy Scouts come and hide Easter eggs.
Just
and-
thinking if someone has a question or challenges this, that would make.
Well, we can distribute it however we want. The groups are very happy. It's up to you. You can change those numbers. We don't say that we have a defined criteria, so.
I just think we should have a defined criteria if we're gonna allocate money. We should have some reasoning as to how we distributed it and how it was fair. That's it.
Okay. Well, I'll look at coming up with something.
Nico.
I wanted to take this idea to council because obviously we have a fiduciary responsibility as well as, you know, okaying this, you know, as well, and the amounts that are in there. I personally don't have a problem with any of the amounts that's allocated. I think just the only thing I would ask is in the past, we've usually spent some time during the second part meeting of the month, you know, kind of planning and helping with the organizing of Corn Festival. And I'd really like to see that come back, especially since we're playing a greater role in it than we used to be. I mean, it's okay having a planning or event committee do it and meet during the day, but I think we do need to have some sort of visioning sort of meeting regarding the Corn Festival, just to make sure that we have all our I's dotted and T's crossed, and also anticipate some changes that to the event that may come eventually. And that's,
Did do that.
well, I understand that, but I think that needs to happen at the council level as well. I mean, since we're
No, I'm
okay.
saying at our retreat, we did discuss that.
You're asking for an additional one.
I'm
outside
asking
of-
for a separate meeting, you know, it doesn't have to be right before the event, preferably be several months ahead, just so we can anticipate some changes.
I don't
that's-
see a problem. I think we could just do a special work session on, I think maybe on just community events in general.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll make a list and maybe in the January, February range, because that's when we really start gearing up and planning. So if we could get
Right.
some high level policy criteria from council of, you know, these are some of the things you'd like us to try to achieve.
I think what Counselor Cox is talking about with how we're allocating the funds is
Yeah.
more transparency. Is what I'm hearing, so that when, if and when, because we're small town, people say, well, why did they get so much money? They were only there one day. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that
Right.
organization volunteered
that's-
numerous hours, but
Yeah.
the general public doesn't.
That's why we gave you the hours and the number of volunteers. It's a general guideline, but we do other things like. I mean, I'm trying not to call specific people out because I don't want to diminish the value of
Yeah.
other volunteers. But there are people that do a lot more in the concise amount of time that they volunteer versus people that don't do as much. And so we see that because we're working with them. And so we give a little bit of weight here and there for that. The Santiam Hospital, the other thing that we have to keep in mind is this is just what people wrote down when they signed in. Not everybody signs in. So we know Santiam had more than 30 volunteers. And all of that money that the SIT gets goes back into helping Aumsville families. And so you're keeping a lot of that money here in the community. So there's kind of this weighted system there, but we'll come up with more of like a scale criteria for y'all to look at if you'd like. I mean, I can do it. I can do something this year, but if you'd like me to do it next year, I can do that as well. It's just, it's important that we provide an incentive for these groups to come and volunteer, because we had 158 volunteers this year. We probably need closer to 200. It's a lot of hard work in one day. It really is.
I got no problem with distribution. My only question was, how do you explain that if you get a question? It would be nice to have a transparent way to explain how we can do that.
Yeah. And I would explain it just like that. It's based on the number of volunteers, the number of hours, and then the other things they're involved in throughout the year. So, so should I bring this forward, these contracts forward for distribution?
I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with it. I would just like to see a little bit. I would like to see a document that explains that, rather than just saying, oh, well, we do this and we do this and we do this. It's like, how do we show that? Where's
Like the methodology
document as to where we get that?
Yeah.
So I would like to see that.
We'll come up with some sort of awards criteria. Okay, I think we could do that. Okay, Public Works Facility, it's going gangbusters out there. I think they're pouring concrete slabs now. The building will start going vertical next week. We are doing a time-lapse video. If it all works out, I'll enjoy coming at my State of the City presentation in January and doing a sped up time-lapse video for you. Our water reservoir project. So as you know, we took a lot of gambles with this project. Some of it paid off, some of it didn't pay off. We did drill a well out at Porter Boone Park. The yield on that well wasn't good at all. And it's like I said, when there's no technology that says drill here, big pocket of water, you just drill a hole and you either hit it or you don't. I don't know.
Those sticks, Ron.
Huh?
Get those sticks.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, actually, we thought about that. I don't know why that technology doesn't exist, but it's just the way it is. And so we do have a well that's drilled. It's capped. We've left it. We're not gonna do anything more with it right at this moment. But I think we were only getting like 30 gallons a minute, and we could only pump part of a day because it has to recover. And so that's not a very good production well. Well, we did, but then we opened up the reservoir bids, which came in quite a bit higher than we expected. And so really the critical piece that we need is the reservoir. And so what I'd like to do is go ahead, move forward with the reservoir award and get that constructed, and then decide next steps for another well. One of the things that we are doing with our consultant is identifying other locations in the city. That location that we picked was identified as a primary location. We had a lot of data. I mean, we've got a well 100 feet from this well that's pumping 280 gallons a minute or something. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. The problem with it is every time you dig one of those holes, it's $250,000. It doesn't matter if there's water down there or not. So what I think we probably should do is, my thoughts on this is get the reservoir constructed. Now it's over budget, but we do have some money. I believe, I'm going to double check the budget, but I do believe we'll have enough money in the water system development charge account and in the water capital improvement account to offset the additional cost. And what my plan would be then to do would be, if we have potential sites for a new well, to probably come back with council with a proposal for maybe a small loan for the well and the meter read, which is what I had that other money set aside, was the new meter read system. Now I have to give that up for the reservoir. So we do have capacity in the water fund for debt without raising any rates. So we could go on and get those things and not have to raise any rates and do it. But I just wanted to give you an update. I have no action for you to do tonight. I just wanted to let you know where we were with those. One is over budget, which everything seems to be over budget these days. The good news is we do have money in those funds that we can rearrange and get the project going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good news is coming.
We're gonna check. I mean, if there are the revolving loans that were just announced through the Clean
Yeah.
Water State Revolving Fund, where you can get a 50% loan forgiveness. And this is a separate project from sewer, so we might be able to get something there. So we'll look for that. We'll come back. Heiberger Ditch. The debris has been removed. We took a lot of debris out of Heiberger Ditch, and I had a couple of people complaining. I did remind them that it's a man-made ditch for the purpose of moving stormwater. You know, it's not a preserve or anything like that, but we did get it cleaned out, and it really needed it. What happens is the ditch fills up with debris. There's trees in the ditch, those were all removed. And as the debris floats through the high water events, it gets snagged and then causes a backup. And then when that snag lets loose, the only place it's got to go is to the bridge. So it really needs to stay cleaned up, that channel. That it should be left in its natural state. But its natural state is it's a ditch that we dug. That is its natural state, so.
Or it would be flooding.
And
I mean-
state, it's gonna be their homes that are flooded, and then they're gonna be yelling at us as
Yeah.
well.
Right.
It's part
I
of
mean, there's a
the-
reason why
Right.
we're trying to keep it clear. It has a purpose, so.
It-
But a lake or.
It's not a lake,
Or a river,
yeah,
yeah.
it's man-made. We made it,
And it's part of the agreement, isn't it? That it's supposed, yeah.
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 We've been cleaning the ditch out. It's really the responsibility of each of the homeowners along there. We've been doing it just because the homeowners have it. And I'll be honest with you, I'm more concerned with keeping it clear than I am trying to go and after each individual homeowner, so. So about every 2 to 3 years, we try to get a crew out there and excavate the debris. LLC conference, I think went really good. Our staff gave a great presentation. I thought they did a fantastic job. We got a lot of positive feedback for that. If any of you that went to the conference gave your personal credit card at the hotel, check your statements to make sure they didn't charge your personal credit card. We've had a lot of issues with them charging the personal cards and not the city card. Or your personal card were just supposed to be for incidentals. And so not everybody got that charge correct. And if you have an issue, just get with me and I'll take care of it, or I'll try to. And then wastewater, that's our big elephant in the room. One of the things I really want to do with council, we're going to have to go ahead and set some direction to this. But before we do, I really want to take council on a little tour of another wastewater facility, the one that we've modeled this wastewater facility after, which is the city of Jefferson's facility. And I'm trying to figure out transportation because I'd like to get a vehicle big enough that rather than us just drive down there and drive back, that we can actually do some other discussions about the technology and kind of our plan forward. So, I'll see what's available. If nothing else, we do have access to a passenger van that we can all fit in and go down there and just do the tour and come back. So, what I'll do is I'll send an email out and see what you guys think you could do. It would preferably, if we could do it during a weekday, perhaps everybody can ask for a couple hours off, or we can start early, we can go late. What works best for you? If we have more time, I'd like to visit a couple of other cities. If we don't have time, the critical piece is just seeing the wastewater facility. And I think you really need to get eyes on it, physically get eyes on it before we jump in any further. So I really want to do that soon. Hopefully you all can be available. And I think that's really all I have for my report. We've got a lot of good work happening. Happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any questions. All right, moving on to mayor and councilor reports. So the LOC conference, I think, went really well. I'm really proud of our staff. Did a great job. We did get tons of feedback. My emails still blowing up about so we did a presentation on how we've changed the way we engage with the community. Going back from having a recall over $12 to getting over 800 signatures on a petition, getting the whole community involved in infrastructure, which is not something the community is, everyone likes to hear about the events, but when it comes to facilities and water bills and everything that affects it, got a lot of praise for our bilingual and dual language outreach. And the engagement in calling people and going to door to door. Really stressed that it wasn't just the staff and the counselors, it really was the whole town getting involved. And we did a great presentation, and I'm really proud of everybody. There is a spring conference if you weren't able to make it to this fall conference. The fall conference is the big one, but for new counselors or one maybe you just need a refresher, they have some great classes. As soon as the email comes out, email the city the next day, like right away, and let them know that you want to go if you're going to go to the spring conference. It's smaller, it's more intimate, but there are some worthwhile presentations and information. That's all I have.
Could I add something to
Yeah.
that, the LOC? I just wanted to say publicly, I was super proud of that presentation. Great job. I was also really impressed with the leadership that you and Ron showed for our staff. I mean, it was incredible. Staff speak. So that's how we develop leaders. So that's our goal. You guys did an excellent job of just leadership. So thank you for that.
I would say that the LOC conference this year I went to is one of the best ones I have attended, and I thought it was a great job by all, but especially by our staff. You did a great job, and I enjoyed your presentation, even though I saw some of it before. So just let you know. And also update you on SCATs. I've been attending monthly, and they have tabled our addition to the committee until November for discussion for some behind the scenes negotiate. I won't have any updates on that until after our November meeting.
I have a different update to it.
Nico, you have anything to add?
Just wanted to take the opportunity to really thank Ron and our staff and just the collaboration for putting together that presentation. Got so much positive feedback from other cities, and also just was a good kick in the butt to some cities that just didn't know where to start and how to deal with such a challenging issue. So I want to just thank you guys for the awesome job you did presenting and sharing your knowledge with the other cities. They're in the same boat as us, as trying to find funding and everything like that. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'll just add on that a little bit. So, cities are very collaborative, and I think what happens is the senior members, meaning people that have been in cities for a while, take an opportunity at the conferences to reach out to newer members. You get a lot of newer elected officials who are just kind of feeling their way through it, or even new managers. And I will say there's a very collaborative approach amongst cities in Oregon to ask questions, and the conference is a great way to do that. And the great thing about the conference is during these presentations, it gets people that are struggling with issues to know that there's questions that they can ask, or they're just dealing with the issues, but they see a presentation on, maybe it's communication, or maybe it's projects or grants or project management, and that really spurs. So it's very valuable use of our time and resources. And that after the conference is over, we still do assist people. There's cities that are using our forecast model from past presentations. I talked to a couple of cities that I'm going to help them with their handbook because they don't have staff to do that, and I'm writing ours anyway. And so, yeah, we do that. Tomorrow I'm doing an orientation for a new planning commission member. And at the same time, I have somebody going to come and help train us on processing permits. And so it's that very collaborative approach that's worthwhile. Thank you.
And I think, Ron, just to add on to that collaborating is what helped fund our projects, right? So, and that was the message that we carry forward. We got our community involved, but we also got our state and federal and county leaders and being proactive instead of reactive in a very difficult situation. Moving on.
Oh, I got one.
Oh, one more. Okay.
Sorry. Just to give everybody an update, I attended the Marion County Public Safety Coordinating Council. Just a few highlights from there. The commissioners, I don't know if they probably have by now, but they basically let us know. And they gave on the Mossman report. Is anybody familiar with that? It's with the state hospital. It's an order. They have to do the aid and assist hearing. So they gave an update on that, and it like that's working. They say they're in compliance, but they only have to be in compliance for 60 days. So see if that comes. Once they're in compliance for 60 days, the order goes away. So we'll have to monitor that, and maybe we'll get it.
Moving on to good of the order. Sir, want to bring up?
I would just like to thank the city staff for the pumpkin patch. That was a lot of fun. It was really a bit of time setting up, but it was over in a flash. Every pumpkin was gone, every donut, every cookie, every piece of candy that we had out there. And it was supposed to be a 2-hour event, and it was over before an hour was up. So
that's good. I think
that's great.
last year it wasn't, I think we had some pumpkins left over, didn't we, last year? So that's great.
And we were giving away some cookies at the end last year. So
We're building the event.
That was on my calendar, but I ended up having to work, so I wasn't able to make it. I'm so glad to hear that it went really well. All right. So nothing for good of the order. Correspondence. We have no correspondence in our packets. There is. Oh, there is no executive session. I was like, and we can go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 8:49 p.m.